Morning Blues for Wednesday, the 15th of January 2025. This is mainly going to be my reaction and review to last night's game against Bournemouth. I was planning to do that review as normal, and then this morning's show would probably be a little bit more of a post-mortem, but then also maybe looking at other stuff. But unfortunately, some personal stuff happened last night that sort of disrupted any plans to make a video, unfortunately. But yeah, now I'm here to talk about it, and it is really frustrating. And I think that I spoke extensively before the game, and I think a lot of people felt that this was a really important game for Chelsea to win. And although Bournemouth, as they showed in that second half, have been a really impressive side this year, there's a reason they are where they are in the table and were minutes away from beating Chelsea. You can't get away from the growing frustration, the growing problems we have seen that have been consistent trends amongst a flurry of recent games over the past month. And only getting 3 points out of a run that included Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Palace and Bournemouth is simply not good enough. And it feels like a really damaging period of the season for Enzo Maresca and his players. And there are reasons why individually last night and even throughout this run we can look at VAR, the obvious failures and incompetency of officials, and maybe individual players who should have been doing a lot more, like Nicolas Jackson finishing his chances. However, there are other things about the way Chelsea are struggling at the moment and the involvement of Enzo Maresca and what responsibility and accountability he has at his current point that need to be addressed and discussed. And also I think something that I spoke about a lot last season, I spoke about in the summer, and kind of who is most accountable maybe if you're frustrated and feeling like Chelsea aren't doing enough or are in a really vulnerable position that a promising season could turn into a really disappointing one, especially in the Premier League, very quickly. Please do like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below. Also, we'll be obviously doing more content between now and the end of the week. I want to hear your thoughts about January and the January transfer window. Question of the day: if you could only sign one player, if you could only really fix one position, I think there's more than one position that needs to be fixed, which is an issue with our recruitment. What would it be between now and January transfer deadline day? Because that is also the other part of this analysis, that you can't help but look at the current situation and the way Enzo Maresca is refusing so many times to turn to his subs bench, at least for a significant chunk of the game, and conclude that he just doesn't trust his options. I've said this before, I don't know what the explanation is. Either it's one of two things. Either he doesn't have the experience to turn to his subs bench and use his rotational options a lot better, or he simply doesn't trust what was given to him in the summer, which again, leads back to a more substantial question. I think both things can in some ways be true, but I think one of them is more true than the other because of the long-term evidence. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. The team selection, I was pretty pleased with the team that Enzo Maresca put out. I was happy that Josh Achimpong started. Seeing Caicedo, Lavia and Fernandez all in the team, I think contributed to a first half that was really, really positive. Other than one moment where Sanchez gave the ball away and it led to a shot by Bournemouth hitting the post, Chelsea dominated that first half. It was a really strong performance. I thought it was one of our best performances, even more so than the last time we won a Premier League game against Brentford. I think it really was brilliant. I thought the way we fluidly interchanged in movement, the way particularly at midfield and Lavia's passing in that first half was insane. The way his passing and movement and the way he got out of tight areas when Bournemouth were pressing him was amazing, and I think shows you how devastating a player he can be, because then it also allows, say, Enzo Fernandez to play not exactly as a 10 but as an advanced 8, where he's able to pick up the ball in space with players running in front of him, which is where I think Enzo Fernandez is at his best and why he looked really, really influential and created so many opportunities in the first half. Nicolas Jackson too, his involvement in that first goal was sublime. Like the way he turns a defender, that's one of the attributes that he has, that he's grown, that is wonderful to see because it opens up so much room for Chelsea. The brilliant timing of the pass, and Cole Palmer, as he's done before, the fake shot and then calmly putting it away. That's the one player we know can finish chances, Cole Palmer. And then, of course, we had more chances and Chelsea could have been home and dry by half time. and Nicolas Jackson, the big chance, I think, that the one that he'll be ruining more is the one that's cut back from Madueke after he does some brilliant work down the right wing. Madueke too looked like a different player in most in the game. He also did stuff in the second half too. I thought it was a good performance by him. And he cuts it back, and Jackson, as he has before, leaning back, technique not great, it goes over the bar. And then the header that's well saved by Travers, and the rebound that goes into side netting. And unfortunately for Jackson, what looked like a really promising night that could have reignited his season in terms of a goal scoring aspect, really deteriorated. And people, because of the way the second half played out, will be directly looking at Jackson's poor finishing, which I think is justified. However, there is more to it than that. Because at half-time, it's still 1-0. Chelsea have done a lot of good work. There's been a lot of good performances. And just because you've missed chances, there is still 45 minutes left of this game. And my concern was that it's 1-0. Momentum's going to shift at some point because that's natural in the Premier League. How does Enzo Maresca react if that happens? And then also because Bournemouth are a team statistically who get better as a game goes on, also, how do you react to that? And it wasn't even going on, like literally within minutes of the second half beginning. Lavia gave the ball away stupidly, and Caicedo, coming in from a right back position, stupidly gives away a penalty. Kluivert doesn't miss from the spot this season. And then suddenly the game turns. And within moments, the whole mood of this game is turned around. Now, the good thing was there was a significant chunk of time to rectify things. Enzo, to his credit, does make a sub. He brings on Reece James for Romeo Lavia. And of course, right at the end, that pays dividends. But unfortunately, I think for a majority of the second half, not having Lavia was really detrimental to Chelsea. Now, I'm not going to blame Maresca, because why would we be playing Lavia for more than like 45, 50, 60 minutes at the moment? I don't want him to get re-injured. But it's not a great reflection on Chelsea's structure. It felt like the moment Lavia was taken off the pitch, any semblance of fluidity, and he was accountable for giving the ball away in a stupid position, but just in terms of Chelsea wrestling back control, I think that really hurt Chelsea in a big way. Also, then that leads to, we got to talk about the VAR incident, which happens before the second Bournemouth goal, which is astonishing, absolutely astonishing, but it's peak PGMOL in a nutshell, really, especially against Chelsea. Cucurella is yanked down, and yes, Brooks and Cucurella had some afters earlier in the game, but that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Commentary was trying to justify that was a reason why maybe this led to a yellow card. No. On the face of it, I don't care what's happened in the game before. If you yank someone's hair to pull them down to the ground, if you basically clothesline them, maybe David Brooks is getting himself ready to go in the Royal Rumble at the end of this month, maybe wants to get himself to WrestleMania. It's a straight red card. And also beyond that, it is the first time, and this has been concluded since, and I thought it was weird in the moment, we've been consistently told that VAR's remit has nothing to do with yellow cards. It's to do with offsides, checking goals, penalties, and of course, potential red cards. Maybe upgrading or just an incident the referee has missed. I've never seen a VAR incident turn into a yellow card. It just simply hasn't happened. Which makes a farce of the whole situation. Not only have you got it wrong, but you've done something that is outside of what PGMOL and what we've been told VAR can do, which makes it even more comical and just completely disgraceful. And it speaks again to the horrendous officiating, the lack of accountability for officiating in this country. That is a game-changing moment. If Brooks is sent off, if Chelsea suddenly are in a position where they've got a man advantage, it completely turns around the game. That should have been a straight red card for Brooks. Chelsea should have been a man up, and maybe Chelsea would have gone on to win the game then. Yeah, there's no getting around it that decision was huge in the context of the game. It also, you factor in the Liam Delap decision, the potential penalty Chelsea could have got against Crystal Palace. There were other decisions that Chelsea could have got earlier in the season. We can all count them up. Listen, Premier League officiating is in a horrendous place. It has been for about a decade now. So I don't know what else to tell you. That's what it is. And I hope Chelsea at some point are going to put out a statement or kind of be a little bit more firm about this, because other clubs do it. I don't know why Chelsea haven't acted on this, because I don't care what media kind of scrutiny or criticism you get for it, it's just simply unacceptable that we see this on a number of occasions. And it wasn't just that. There were other things within the game that the ref got totally wrong on a number of occasions. But then, we can talk about that, but then there's also like looking at Chelsea's own performances. What can Chelsea control? What can Enzo Maresca? What can the players control? And still, very little change. The momentum was still going in Bournemouth's favour. The goal itself, I know a lot of people will look at Josh Achimpong. It's brilliant finish by Semenyo, and it's a learning experience for Achimpong of you can't allow at this level a player like Semenyo even that time. It was still an amazing finish. He put it in the one place he was going to score. It was still, if a Chelsea player puts that in the back of the net, we're talking about how wonderful that finish is. It was still a brilliant finish. But the thing that was weird to me was, especially with a younger player, the ease to which it became a one-on-one situation this wasn't like a counter-attacking opportunity. This was the ball was played down the left, and then suddenly there's a direct pass into our 6-yard box where a good attacker is able to go one-on-one with one of our centre-backs, and there seems to be no cover around, no one to help out Josh. And, again, I look at that central midfield area, who I've given a lot of praise to. I've given praise to Enzo Fernandez. I've given praise to Moises Caicedo, who obviously was playing more as a right-back in this game. But, Reece at that point had moved to the right-back position. Where is the help and cover in that moment? And I think it was a real shame that then, minutes later, it almost feels like Enzo makes a point of subbing Josh for Tosin, which, Tosin does not come on. And I've heard a lot about Tosin being a leader. I'm sorry, Tosin seems like a nice bloke. But when I think about leaders, I think about teams that propel their teammates and their club to higher levels, that show a standard of performance that is better than everyone else. In that sense, you could say Cole Palmer is a bit of a leader, even though we don't think of him as that, that performance level. Tosin is not a leader. He might in the dressing room be a vocal character, but he comes on and within a few minutes is barely able to control a football. And he's not been a great defender for Chelsea. And I think making an example of Achimpong, I'm not entirely sure it's doing the protecting that maybe Maresca thinks it does. To me, it felt like brutally, I think it felt like a cowardly way out. I think it was an easy sub to make. I see it so often where the easy sub to make is to take off the inexperienced player. When actually Chelsea needed a goal. You didn't need another centre-back on that pitch. You needed another goal. Chelsea needed 2 goals to get back into this game and win it. So then I look at the bench. Obviously, we spoke about Nkunku, but you still had Nkunku on the bench. You had João Felix on the bench. It takes a period of time for those subs like Neto and Felix to come on. Maybe a little bit too long for me. That's a consistent issue we've had. And Chelsea is suddenly in a position where this is a game that is getting away from them. The mood, the temperature is obviously going to go down. Luckily, late on, we get that free kick and Reece James has a wonderful moment for himself. And great to see because, Reece, you just see in moments like that, and we even saw in glimpses in this game. You have to keep on going back to this, and it's the big tragedy of Reece James as a player with his injury record is that he is a level raiser. He is a game changer. He is someone who absolutely you could categorise as a leader on the pitch because he does things that many players can't execute. The big tragedy of Reece is we only get to see it about 8 times a season. So I feel Reece James is a Groundhog Day situation. It's a Groundhog Day conversation. But for him, for everything he's gone through, not only this season, in recent years, that was a big moment for him personally. And it saved something in the game. It was a wonderful goal, wonderful moment of technique, which we know Reece has, taking responsibility when Enzo or Cole Palmer could have taken that free kick. And it at least gets a point for Chelsea, which isn't the worst thing. It means Bournemouth doesn't, they don't go level on points with us. And of course, City drew. Newcastle was still to play, so Chelsea could be outside the top 4 by the next time they play. It means that Chelsea now are in a position where top 4 is looking very vulnerable. And because we've failed to capitalise on this run of games, it's going to make the rest of the season very dicey. And that doesn't mean the season's over, but it does mean Chelsea have to act. Chelsea have to act in the transfer window. There's no two ways about it. We simply do not have the quality options that Maresca clearly needs. And just generally, there are areas of the pitch that just simply haven't been looked upon or been built up enough to sustain a season like this. And that is where actions have to be made. My worry is, whatever I think of Matisse Tell, Is that just another clutter player in the sense that you're going to bring in another young, inexperienced player when actually what this squad has needed and has cried out for from last season is a bit more experience, is a bit more instant ready-made players to come in and make an instant impact. That is what the January window is kind of there for. So I'd like a centre forward who's going to be more of a finisher, where Jackson could play off, because Jackson's movement around and his creativity and I think his judgment in certain positions and areas has been brilliant. I still maintain 9 goals at this point in the season for a player like him is not disastrous. However, there's no getting around that his finishing is letting him down at the moment. There's no two ways about it. And because Chelsea failed to act in the transfer market to get a rotational option that could have aided Chelsea and kind of maybe hidden or alleviated the pressure on him when others have dipped, it's become a bigger issue. So that's obvious. In centre-back, it says a lot that Tosin and Disasi, who's going to be off, that 18-year-old Josh Achimpong has now become a starting player. I think that says so much about the lack of shrewdness in our recruitment and a lack of quality in our recruitment. In central midfield, we sold Conor Gallagher. We don't have great midfield depth there because Lavia can barely stay fit, and Enzo and Caicedo, you're asking them to play literally every week. Andre Santos is there. He's been playing really well for Strasbourg. I think it's an obvious no-brainer to bring him back into this team because I think he could make a lot of impact and can make that area stronger, not weaker, which has been a real issue for Chelsea. I want to bring in players or bring back players like Trevor Chalobah. I think would make our defensive options instantly stronger. It may not be the concrete solution for the long term, but it makes our option stronger, and of course adding an attacking signing, which is obvious at this point. So this game, to me, just as a summary, I think kind of felt like a summary of Chelsea's season, because games are not concluded in 45 minutes. Seasons are not concluded by November, and I think there was a lot of people who rushed to a lot of extreme judgment when the team was objectively doing well. I sat here and said I think my pre-season fears were wrong, and in some ways it's still not a diabolical situation. It's still a salvageable situation. Like, Chelsea are still technically, as I sit here speaking now, in fourth. I don't think they will be for much longer if this form continues. However, seasons are not defined by what happens in November, and the early judgments that this was the best squad in Europe, I kind of laughed and chuckled at even when we were winning. And I said as much, and people had a go at me in the comments of talking about the lack of depth. But I think over the past month, it's been exposed that the issues in the transfer window over the summer have only come home to roost because it's not about a couple of months. You can have a nice run of results. Maresca, his flaws as a coach and perceived flaws as a coach don't surprise me that much, because I think, when you hire a coach who didn't have that much experience and you take the risk of someone who maybe in certain ways has dogmatic beliefs or just, inexperience, right? Like, that has not performed in this pressurized environment before. Yes, he's been at Man City, but not as the main guy, not when your decisions are being scrutinized to this level. It doesn't really surprise me. I think he's done a lot of good things, but, when you take that risk, you are taking that risk. And that's why for Maresca, who can turn around and go, listen, my team has created a lot of opportunities, we could have won more games. Who am I looking at? And it's the people I'm always looking at Chelsea, and this is not just a Clear Lake thing, it's who are making the decisions in the long term, who are the people responsible who are here more than just like 12 months to make decisions about this squad, about the management. And of course, at the moment, it's the sporting directors. It's Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. These are people who have constructed this squad with the authority and, the guidance, I guess, or kind of the say of Behdad Iqbali as well. These are the people that are responsible. They've had 4 transfer windows, and people can arguably and justifiably look at this squad with all the money that's been spent. We don't have a great goalkeeper. In centre-back, there are still question marks. In midfield, there are still question marks. And at centre-forward, there are still question marks. There is a lack of quality depth to this squad. The decisions we've made to sell certain players, to discard certain players, has been bizarre. Some of them are being rolled back even 6 months after the summer. They have failed to create, with the money they have been given to build a squad, a serious squad. That I don't think is an unjustified. I know some people will come out and go, I'm being hyperbolic, I'm going overboard, but my analysis is based on a long period of time. It's not just based on the last 4 weeks. It's based on the last, I guess, what is it now, 2-3 years, especially since Jan 2023 when they fully took control. And that is why they need to act now. But my one concern is these people have acted in the transfer window before, and their actions maybe at the start get a lot of praise, but how is that going to look in 6-8 months, because that matters as well when you're signing players. It's not, I've always said this about Chelsea as a culture, we live in a 2-week cycle, it feels like, and we only think about what's going to be there for the next game. Results matter, yes, results do matter, and I think that's a point I'm going to keep on elaborating, because results matter this season. Chelsea need to get Champions League football. However, I think people need to look at certain transfer decisions that have happened that at the time people widely celebrated, but actually as time has gone on have justifiably and with evidence look like worse ones. They look like worse ones that really haven't helped the level of the team. In sacrifice of some of these signings, we've had to lose players who I think could have been a more benefit to us. So yeah, I don't think as a Chelsea fan I am being hyperbolic if I sit here and look at 3 points out of Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Palace and Bournemouth. I'm supposed to be over the moon by that? No, like any Chelsea head coach in my lifetime would have got some scrutiny for that, even before we started winning on the titles. Like, this is just, I think the criticism is valid. So Chelsea have to win against Wolves. If we don't win against Wolves, I think the pressure will ramp up again, because results need to start happening. Chelsea need to find a way back. There's no denying we have quality in certain positions, and there is certain evidence that in that first half performance, as there was against Palace, the team can create opportunities. The fundamental issue is there's more to it than that. And I think whether it's improving in the transfer window, which is kind of the big thing here, or the coach himself learning to maybe be a bit more proactive in games, because it feels like we are being out-coached at the moment. It feels like teams are over the course of the game getting the better of us or getting one over on us, which when you're not facing, Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City, I think you are serious questions as a head coach. I think justifiable questions. So I hope you have a great Wednesday. We'll be back again soon as we look ahead to the weekend and the Monday game against Wolves, which is huge at the Bridge. And also, of course, we'll be reacting to any transfer news that comes about in this window. So follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.